Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm going to be showcasing a Pokemon that is currently unobtainable in Pokemon Go, and that is a Great League eligible Purified Giratina Altered. Now, the window to get this Pokemon was very brief. Back when Giratina Altered was in Giovanni Grunts, you had to trade with a trainer who had a low-level account. If they defeated Giratina and purified it, they could trade it to you, and it would actually have a chance of being Great League eligible. Now, the good news is, if you don't have one of these, the Shadow Giratina will largely outperform the Purified, but considering it is an insanely rare collector's item, I figured I should take it for a spin in the Open Great League for the very first time. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and we pick up a pretty neutral lead in the first match, Purified Giratina into Shadow Hippowdon. Hippowdon is a Pokemon that is surging in popularity at Leaderboard Elo, and we see why when Earth Power hits for big damage. I'm going to farm up past the return, but only go for the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw should still put them very low, my opponent is going to no shield, and they make it to the Weather Ball Rock, but I'm able to switch out and catch onto the Empoleon. Empoleon more than happy to absorb that damage. In comes Fearow, and it becomes very important the fact that I actually snuck through a Metal Sound on that catch, because Fearow wins charge attack priority over Empoleon, so Fearow usually dominates this matchup, but up one Metal Sound, suddenly the CMP tie does not matter as Empoleon is actually able to outpace. My opponent will CMP tie, Drill Run to my second Hydro. I want to try and either knock out the Fearow or pressure away the final shield. I get the final shield, I'm just going to let the Empoleon go because I should have a ton of remaining energy on that Giratina. So I can bring back in the Giratina, outpace the Fearow, take the knockout with the Dragon Claw, and then I have to trust that Kanto Ninetales will be able to win the endgame. Dragon Claw will be the end of Fearow. In the back is Tinkaton, in comes the Kanto Ninetales, and that's a good game. We move to game number 2, picking up a dominant lead win, Giratina into Shadow Quagsire. My opponent safe switches into Fearow, and again, I don't really have a clean answer to this Pokemon. It's in moments like these I wish that I was still running the Emolga team, because Emolga obviously is an amazing answer to the Fearow, but with no Emolga on the team, I'm going to have to get a little bit creative. So I fire off the Dragon Claw, get the shield, no shield to Drill Peck, and then send in Empoleon. Even though Empoleon is down quite a bit of energy to the Fearow, I have a shield advantage, so I can just shield up the Drill Run, make it to the Hydro Cannon, and continue to ramp up the pressure. I should always be able to preserve Switch Advantage, and with Switch Advantage, I feel like I'm in a pretty good position. Quagsire is really not going to be able to do much into the Giratina, even though Giratina has already taken quite a bit of chip damage. They fire off Drill Run number 2, I undertap the Hydro Cannon, and my opponent doesn't end up going for the catch. So they feel comfortable letting the Fearow go, and presumably going for a big farm on the Quagsire. In my eyes, Quagsire is never going to throw right away on 5 because they lose charge attack priority to Empoleon. They should always look to try and overfarm, so that's why I end up throwing on 7. My opponent builds up to 10. Now I get to find out what is their secondary charge attack, and now we learn it's Stone Edge. I should be able to outpace here with the Giratina, so I bring in the Giratina, they try for a catch onto the Tinkaton, and this game is over. I imagine these battles are probably very therapeutic for those who do not like Tinkaton, because so far Tinkaton is just getting repeatedly cooked by the Kanto Ninetales. My opponent did not get the Bulldoze debuff, which means a second Bulldoze doesn't really worry me. However, a Gigaton Hammer could be a little bit threatening, so I overfarm by 2 and CMP tie as they make the Gigaton. Weather Ball will take the knockout, and as they bring back in the Quagsire, there's just simply no ability for them to overfarm enough. So I just outpace, I make the Weather Ball, KO the Quagsire, and we're able to get the game 2 win. Hopping into game number 3, we're going to be leading Purified Giratina into Shadow Alolan Ninetales, and it appears our fun is over. I save switch into Empoleon, my opponent sends out a Mantine. Hold on a second. This might actually be a flippable matchup for the Empoleon. To be honest, I'm not too familiar with the Empoleon-Mantine matchup, so I guess we get to learn it here together. I'm able to land the Drill Peck, which is nice damage. I'm going for Drill Peck number 2, but it doesn't look like I can ever Metal Sound down. Mantine should always just go for the Water Pulse, so I decide that I will put up the Protect Shield. If I'm going to shield, I want to shield the Nuke move. However, my opponent's down with Water Pulse number 2, and I'm realizing that I actually made a pretty big misplay. Even though I'm going to get to double Drill Peck, it's going to be a CMP tie to the Twister, so my opponent will always be able to maintain Switch Advantage. I think my better play probably would have been to display for Shield Advantage, but then my opponent no shields. They bring in a Shadow Diggersby. Diggersby tries for the Farm Down, but they don't get it, and I'm able to get the back-to-back Hydro Cannons. Had the 6th Mudshot KO'd here, I would have been in dire straits, but the 1-13-13 Empoleon clings to life and pressures away the final shield. Now I can bring in the Purified Giratina, and this thing is incredibly tanky. Shadow Diggersby will fire off the Scorching Sands, but that's just not a problem for the Giratina. and I realize a guaranteed safe way to win this game is to fire off a return. If my opponent catches, it's not going to matter because I went for the return. They do go for the catch onto the Ninetales, but return is going to hit for so much damage onto the Ninetales. I bring my Ninetales into theirs, can't quite get the farm down before the chilling water, but even so, I should still be in a winning position. Because Shadow Diggersby, it does not take energy balls very well, even a -1 energy ball. I fire off the energy ball, Diggersby gets rocked, and somehow we're able to escape leading Giratina into Ninetales and take the win. Decent lead in the next match, Giratina into Stunfisk. My opponent safe switches into Fearow, and again, I don't really have a good answer to Fearow with this team. Man, time and time again, I'm wishing that I was still running that Emolga team, because Emolga would be absolutely feasting on these safe switches. I'm going to be firing off a Dragon Claw, pressuring away a shield, and this time I decide to bring in the Ninetales. Ninetales obviously going to do very well into the Fearow as long as you're not down a bunch of energy. I put up the shield as they go for the drill run, farm up to the back-to-back Weather Balls, and let's see if we can make their life uncomfortable. Weather Ball will take the knockout here, they're forced to put up the final shield, and they pivot out and send in Altaria. This is very, very bad. I farm up until right before the Sky Attack. I'm hoping the Weather Ball is going to burn my switch clock. It does not. I wait the turn, switch out, and I'm able to get the catch onto Empoleon. So I'm barely able to save the Ninetales. The Fearow does still have a drill run loaded. I'll have to keep that in mind for later in the game, but being able to save that Kanto Ninetales with all the energy and not having to burn my shield is absolutely massive. Drill Peck will do very nice damage onto the Altaria. Altaria can full send the Flamethrower, but I will be able to hang on. It's going to be very close. Can Empoleon make the move? No, I cannot. It would have been damage registration error. On the new system, I would have gotten that charge deck every single time, but unfortunately, I am in Competitor's Cup, and that means I'm playing by the old rules. Mud Bomb is going to pressure away a shield for my Giratina. I try and throw one Dragon Breath and the Dragon Claw, but the game overtaps me and forces me to do 2. That's really not great, as that limits the amount I can overfarm with the Ninetales. Ninetales CMP ties the Stunfisk, and Energy Ball should be enough to secure the knockout. His final 2 Pokemon are that Altaria and that Fearow. Both have a bit of energy. The Fearow does have a move. In comes the Fearow. Either he got one turn bring in or he didn't throw the move. He's going to let me knock him out here, but this is going to set up farm for the Altaria. Can Ninetales make the move? We cannot for the second time in the game. We do not get damage registration error, and that's just going to be game over there. Sky Attack KOs the Giratina, and unfortunately, that game will end in a loss. We move to the next game and pick up an amazing lead, leading Giratina into Hisuian Electrode. Hisuian Electrode is completely walled by Giratina. My opponent's going to stay in and look to get some chip damage as they fire off the Wild Charge. Wild Charge, even for being resisted, is a very efficient move. My opponent safe switches into Dunsparce, and this is where things will get a little bit tricky. I don't have an answer to Dunsparce on this team. This team is very soft to Dunsparce. It's not a Pokemon that's run a lot, so I am a little bit worried. Dragon Claw would not knock out here. I'm going to try and get the knockout with Return. I go for the Return, but they put up the shield. They sniffed it out, and that is incredibly unfortunate. The good news is I will be able to tank whatever they throw here. It is going to be the Rock Slide. They can now fire off a second charge stack, and I'm just going to fully sacrifice the Giratina. Giratina has done its job, and now I can bring in the Ninetales. Instant Drill Run comes out from the Dunsparce. I will put up the shield, and unfortunately, I will be forced to fire off a Weather Ball to secure the knockout. Otherwise, I believe they were just now reaching the energy for the Drill Run. The bad news for me is that I have lost switch advantage. I had 2 strong answers to his Hisuian Electrode, but the Electrode is not going to be aligned onto either. It's going to be aligned onto Empoleon, and it's going to be a non-Shadow Marowak in the back. I fire off Energy Ball, get in the shield, no debuff comes through. I bring in Empoleon, and my opponent will fire off the Bone Club. Bone Club would do quite a lot of damage, so I will put up the shield, and in comes Hisuian Electrode. Hisuian Electrode will be able to tank this Drill Peck very comfortably, and unfortunately, I don't believe that I can Ember down with the Ninetales before they double up on Wild Charges. But they make a huge misplay. They overfarm too much. They play to a CMP tie that they do not win, and Drill Peck will secure the KO. My opponent tried to exit with as much energy as possible, but it ends up backfiring in the worst way. Marowak is forced to throw energy at the Empoleon, and now it's all up to the Ninetales. And Ninetales has just enough HP to withstand the Mud Slaps, make it to the Energy Ball. Man, we did not deserve to win this game whatsoever, but you know what? You play the games that you play, and luckily we're able to survive and get the win. We pick up a terrible lead in the next match, Giratina into Licky Licky. Licky Licky is very strong neutrally into this entire team. Shadow Ball I know will not knock out, but it's going to leave a serious dent in Giratina's HP. I could potentially try for the double Dragon Claw, but unfortunately I would get outpaced, so let's lock in some big damage with Return. Return lands onto Licky Licky, instant Shadow Ball comes out from my opponent, and I am just going to let this go and try and go for an incredibly aggressive farm down with Empoleon. I believe if I shield once, I should be able to get the full farm down, and Empoleon up this much energy is very difficult for a lot of teams to answer. So, I shield up the Shadow Ball, my opponent brings in Malamar. This is the non-Shadow Malamar. Non-Shadow Malamar is able to tank these Hydro Cannons a lot better than the Shadow, but the fact that I have the back-to-back means I'm going to get a Protect Shield anyway. Without knowing what my opponent's final Pokemon is, I'm not quite sure which Pokemon I should invest in, Empoleon or the Ninetales. I decided to put up the shield, my opponent baits me with the foul play. That is a very nice call. I'm going to fire off Hydro right before they make the move. If they put up the shield, then I think Empoleon will have value, so I'm going to bring in the Ninetales. Ninetales will hit the field, Malamar will get to land a charge attack. If they superpower, maybe I can farm down, but they foul play, and that's going to force me to throw a Weather Ball. Again, a really nice play from my opponent there, recognizing that if they foul play, I have to throw energy. So Malamar will get KO'd. It's Tinkaton in the back, and it looks like we are in a very good position to win this game. Weather Ball will hit for huge damage out of the Tinkaton. Tinkaton can overfarm to the max. I believe they have 7 Fairy Winds now on the Tinkaton. Bulldoze will knock out the Ninetales, but I should be able to take the win with the Empoleon. That is farm up 5, fire off the Hydro Cannon. This is going to be the end of Tinkaton, and then all that's left is the very low health Licky Licky. Licky Licky should be completely energy dry as well. We get the Metal Sound down, and despite basically throwing away the Giratina on the lead, we still get the win. Picking up a bit of a tricky lead in the next match, Giratina into Primeape. I'm hopeful that Primeape will not be able to 2-hit KO here with Rage Fist. If I can survive a Rage Fist and a +1 Rage Fist, then this matchup should be pretty dominant. They land the Rage Fist, they safe switch into Empoleon. I'm going to bank a ton of energy on my Giratina, and then switch into the mirror. I very intentionally did 9 Dragon Breaths before switching there to ensure that I would give them a pretty massive head start, but I'm hopeful that by getting all those Dragon Breaths, then they're going to be in a range where 2 Hydro Cannons will be able to pick up the knockout. My opponent will still be able to get me very, very low here, but I will be able to hang on, and neutralizing Empoleon should hopefully be very helpful for the remainder of the game. So, I tank the Hydro Cannon, fire off a Hydro of my own, and when they bring back in the Primeape, I think I'm going to pivot out and send in the Giratina. I bring in the Giratina, but unfortunately, I just get completely hard-walled as out comes Tinkaton. This is where return on Giratina is definitely to my detriment. If I did have Shadow Sneak would actually do quite a lot of meaningful damage. But return, while it does slowly add up over time, it's just really an inefficient move. My opponent ends up shielding the second return, they get the full farm down, and up this much energy, yes, Tinkaton can actually beat the Ninetales. I bring in the Ninetales, they fire off the Bulldoze, they get the debuff, and in comes Primeape. My only way out is a catch, but my opponent's just simply too patient. They just keep farming, knowing I have to go for the catch at some point, and from here, I'm just going to get completely overrun by the Primeape. The Primeape is just way too far ahead. There's still so much stored energy on that Tinkaton as well, since they had farmed down, they had 100 energy. So at this point, I realized there's just no path forward to winning this game. I really made a big misplay there by pivoting out. We get a great lead in the next match, Purified Giratina into Morpeko. My opponent safe switches into Jellicent, and this is a very big problem. Honestly, I forgot about Jellicent when building this team. Jellicent beats all 3 members of this team. If Morpeko's on the lead, I feel like I should just try and throw away the Empoleon, so I go for the catch and sneak onto Empoleon just to learn that my opponent went for a Surf Bait. That play looked a lot better than it should have been, because even if I caught a Shadow Ball, I still would have survived it, but I was very okay with just fully throwing away the Empoleon, so that way it never got switch locked onto that Morpeko. They have the Shadow Ball loaded, that barely misses the knockout, but in comes Morpeko to snipe me down. Morpeko is still stuck in its electric form, which means they can't really go for Aura Wheel. They're just going to fire off Psychic Fangs. It's not going to do a lot of damage, but this is what's going to put them into Hangry mode. Now their Aura Wheel is dark and absolutely will KO the -1 Giratina. I farm up, fire off the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to be no-shielded, and that lets me get the perfect farm down. I exit with a ton of energy. In the back is Jumpluff. We send in the Ninetales. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We've got the Battle of Dragons in the final match, Giratina into Shadow Hydreigon. Shadow Hydreigon has a massive pacing advantage here, but it looks like my Dragon Breaths are doing a lot more damage to them than theirs are doing to me. Unfortunately, I can't quite get the farm down here, so I will fire off the Dragon Claw pretty close to their next Brutal Swing. Dragon Claw is going to be no-shielded, Hydreigon gets KO'd, and in comes Empoleon. Same game plan as the last Empoleon, bank energy on the Giratina, and then just bring in my Empoleon into theirs. I'm hoping that with energy stored on my Giratina, that's going to be pretty valuable later on in the game, and that I've Dragon Breath them into range where 2 Hydros will secure the knockout. Hydro Cannon is going to be landing onto my Empoleon. They pivot out, and it turns out we had almost identical team ideas. The fact that my opponent banked energy on Empoleon is going to make life very difficult for my Kanto Ninetales later in the game. I decide I'm going to send in the Giratina here. At the very least, Dragon Claw is an incredibly threatening charge attack onto the Ninetales. Ninetales is going to no-shield, and now I can bring my Ninetales into theirs. Ninetales is a complete brick wall to Ninetales energy. Energy Ball, really not going to matter, but my opponent actually does get the debuff. That debuff could set up my opponent to potentially get a farm down here in this matchup. Weather Ball is going to land, I overfarm quite extensively, fire off a Weather Ball of my own, and this will easily be KOing the low HP Ninetales. So, it's all up to the Empoleon, and my opponent actually gets one turn bring in. I don't want to take advantage of this, so I am going to overfarm one past my Weather Ball just to ensure that I would have got the move anyway, and it turns out, yes, I would have got the move anyway. So this will pressure away the final shield. I have to race to the Dragon Claw here. In comes the Giratina. My opponent ends up resigning the match. I think it would have been very close if I could have survived the Drill Peck and the Metal Sounds there. Might have come down to like 1 HP or so, but my opponent, I don't know if they're just tanking or they just assumed that they did not have the damage needed to KO the Giratina. It would have been a pretty close endgame either way. My Giratina stats are okay, they're not amazing, but Purified Tina is very bulky. But either way, very good game there to my opponent. It was very cool to see a trainer running such a similar team to mine, obviously just with a better Dragon type in Shadow Hydreigon. All in all, after playing Purified Giratina for probably the first time I've ever featured it in a video, it's definitely not what it used to be. People were very worried when Purified Giratina was first Great League eligible that it would just completely run away with the meta. This was back when old Dragon Breath existed, when Dragon Breath wasn't so fast, but instead had a ton of fast move pressure. And Giratina with that kind of stat product with fast move pressure was actually going to be a legit top meta threat. But right after Purified Giratina was eligible, that's when the Dragon Breath rework happened, and post-rework, suddenly, it was actually the Shadow Giratina that ended up outperforming, because you can still get a lot of that old Dragon Breath damage back by having the Shadow status, whereas the regular Giratina, it just doesn't really have the same damage output. Arguably, this Giratina would probably be improved by running Shadow Sneak over Return, but because it's such a rare collector's item, I don't really want to get rid of Return in case I want Return in the future, since that's a move you cannot TM back on. So we ended up taking the Purified Giratina for a spin, and what were the results? We went 4-1 in our first set, then 2-3 and 3-2. Unfortunately, our 3-2 set did lose us 7 elo, so if we're going 9-6 on the day, above 3100, we started at 3160, our total elo gains were +1 elo. We jumped from 3160 to 3196, then lost 28 elo for the 2-3, down to 3168, and then our 3-2 set, because the down pairs were so horrendous, ended up netting us -7 elo. So I can say I went positive in both record and elo with Purified Giratina, which definitely exceeds expectations, although considering how strong the backline is with Empoleon and Shadow Kanto Ninetales being top meta, I guess it does make sense that they were able to carry the Purified Giratina to success. All in all, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you enjoyed watching, please do leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And an extra special thank you as always to our channel members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide to the channel continues to help me do what I do, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.